what we are going to build. Oh, fancy. So one of the most important things in React, which I believe Davey alluded to, is learning how to break things up into components, so chunks of UI. So like things that have a particular aspect of the functionality of the page and render a certain amount of it. So what I've done is create something that's not a list, more like a typical web page. So I've made a newsletter for the dwarves of Middle Earth. And with such hard-hitting articles as Gold Madness, Fact or Fiction. Got some ads for some sweet hammers. We've got some lovely links at the bottom for single orcs in Indianapolis. You won't believe what's under this mountain. Mine 20% more gold with this weird trick. Doctors hate him. All right, so just looking at this page, how would you break this up? Like, what are some pieces of it? Yeah, so it's like a header. Makes sense, right? What else we got? Yeah, Pranav. Yeah, several paragraphs. So you could go as far as to make each paragraph an individual component. What do those paragraphs make up? I think I heard article somewhere, right? Article? Yep. That'd be a good name for it. Body would be okay, but probably would want to avoid that specifically since there's already, that's like already part of the page. What else we got? What was that? Sidebar? Mm-hmm. What else? Title? Or are you talking about all the way up here? Oh, that's a little different. That's actually in the title of the page in the HTML. So that wouldn't be a component, but yeah, you could change that. Yeah, we got nav links. That's good. Footer. Yep. And then like some other links to articles, you know. So yeah, so good job. I mean, it's not difficult to do, but just start thinking about you know, the apps you want to build in terms of that sort of thing. Like, what is a piece that has like its own functionality to it? And you notice too that some of these things are repeated. So like the nav link, what's different about one nav link from another? They're all A tags inside of LI tags, right? Really, what's different about them? Yeah, just the text they say, right? And what they link to. So this would be a good option for, like in Davey's example where we use map to render a list. You could use map to render multiple links. Same thing down here. These are a bit more complex, but what's different about these compared to each other? They're all the same size. They all use the same markup, but what's different from one to the next one? The image, yeah? Yeah. Yeah, so really the image and the text, right? Other than that, they're all the same markup, so that's another opportunity to use that. So, now that we've kind of thought about how we might want to break this up, let's go ahead and if everybody would like to make their own fork of this repo, because what you'll be doing tonight, and we'll go through making the first component or two ourselves, like together, but you'll go through actually get some practice making React components by breaking that up further. Let me put this link into... So there's a link of the repo in the afternoon channel. When you get that, don't clone it directly. Hit the fork first, so get your own copy of it. And then once you have forked it, then you'll want to clone it. Make sure that it is clone with HTTPS. And then once you have that, click on copy to clipboard. And then in terminal, just go to wherever you want to clone this repo into. So if you have like an extern folder or whatever. And then the command is just git clone, and then copy that link in there. And hit enter, and that'll give you your own copy of it. Now, I'm not actually going to go through with that because I already have a copy, obviously. Everybody got that far successfully? Cool. Next step is don't forget to actually change directory into, let's say I'm actually in it. So it makes a folder for you. Don't forget to actually change directory into the project directory. So make sure you do cd Dwarf Underground. And then once you are in that, did everybody do like all the pre-work steps of getting your environment set up? So you'll have npm installed, node installed, that sort of stuff. All right, so once you're in the directory, and this won't work outside of the directory, so make sure you're in that, just run npm install and hit enter. And mine won't take very long because it's already done, but it'll basically load a bunch of stuff for you. It may take a while. It'll probably take significantly longer on yours since you don't actually have the node modules downloaded. Does anybody know what npm is? All right. That was said with great conviction. What does that mean? So, imagine it's your job to be a professional JavaScript developer. And a lot of the things that you write are things that you might use across multiple applications. So say I've made a nifty JavaScript module that gives me nicely formatted dates or something, you know, and this is probably something that's going to apply to a lot of different projects that I work on. It would be great if I could, instead of like copying and pasting that code into every project that I go to, if I could have like one copy of it on a server somewhere that I could just tell a project to load. So that's basically what npm is. If you write something that is widely reusable that you think other people might want to use, you can essentially make an npm package for it and upload it there. And then other people can, in their project, basically tell their project to use yours. And so that's what npm is doing, is looking at the list of packages that you want in your project and downloading that for you. Does everybody make it through the npm install? Mostly. When a lot of people do it all at once from the same IP address, sometimes some people have to wait for other people to, but it'll go eventually. But for right now, if you're currently still installing it, you can open up another tab in your terminal with Command T on a Mac or Control T on a Windows machine. So you can still do stuff from the command line. And then let's go ahead and just open it up in VS Code. So code dot. Let me close all this down because we're not worried about that yet. So this project was created with that Create React app. So there's quite a few folders and things in here, and we're just going to go through real quick and kind of give an overview of what these things are. So the node modules folder is what got installed by npm. So if you click on it to look in there, you'll see there's a lot of stuff. And luckily, we did not have to go do all that ourselves. So yeah, there's a lot of things in there. What npm looks at to know what to install is this package.json. So let's take a look at that next. So just like the name suggests, it is a JSON file. You're pretty familiar with those by now. And it's just some information about our project and what packages our project is. So it's got the name, the version. This is the part that npm is looking at. So our dependencies are React and React DOM. These are the version numbers. We've got dev dependencies, so these are dependencies that are only used in a development environment. So we've got the React scripts there. And then we have our scripts. So when we run npm install, it's looking at all our dependencies and dev dependencies and going to Node Package Manager and getting these versions of those things. Now you might be wondering, if I only really have 3 things listed, why do I have literally like hundreds of things in here? Well, that's because these have their own dependencies. So when it goes to get these, those packages say, hey, I need these dependencies as well. And so it gets all of those things until you have everything you need to run them. The scripts are basically scripts that you can run various things on your project. So the one we'll use the most is start. So if you run npm start, that will actually start up. It runs the React script start, starting up your development server. Build would be like doing the actual compilation and thing to build a production version of your app. Test, if we wrote tests for it, would run your test suite. Eject, we'll not talk about too much right now. We'll talk a little bit more about it later. But basically, if you wanted direct control over like all your Webpack config and everything, you could run eject to get control of that. But yeah, so package.json lists your dependencies. So when you run npm install, it knows what node modules to go get. Then we've got our public folder. We've got our nifty React icon in here, totally sweet. And our actual index.html file. So pretty simple one, just an HTML. In the header, just a couple meta tags, a link to our fav icon, and style sheets. And then as far as the body goes, it's just that one thing that we showed in the slides. It's just an empty div with an ID of root. And that's really all you have to do. You don't really need any more HTML than that. The source folder is where all your actual React stuff is going to live. So if you take a look in there, these files were already created by Create React App. So index.js is basically your root one. You can see we're importing React and React DOM. We're importing also our app file. And then this is our React DOM.render call. So it's basically just saying, hey, we want to render our app component on that root div. And then if we look at app.js, you can see it's pretty simple. It just has a header that says, welcome to React, a little logo, and then some instructions and a paragraph to get started. So all that's built for you automatically when you use Create React App. Any questions so far? Cool. All right, so these two, the static HTML and static CSS, those were added by me. That's the actual markup for that web page we saw. So it's quite a bit of HTML. And then also the CSS for that, which might actually be longer than the HTML. Yeah, it is. All right, so what we want to do is if we want to take this static web page and make it into a React app, where do you think we would start with that process? Right now, what React components do we have? Looking in our source folder. Just the app component, right? It's the only one we got. So, oh, actually, before we do that, let's go ahead and start up our server. Where'd my terminal go? There it is. Everybody's npm install finished at this point? Really? All right. If it hasn't started for you, hopefully it'll finish soon. For everybody else, you can just run npm start. And it will automatically start the server and open up a Chrome tab for you. And this is what you see when you run it on a freshly created project. Ooh, spinny logo. Okay. As far as errors go, maybe Davey could help you with that. Last class, we just kind of had to wait till the end to handle that, but. So yeah, remember when we looked at the markup for app.js? So that's basically what we see. We see the logo, we see the welcome to React, and then this paragraph. So that's there. Now you notice it says, to get started, edit app.js and save to reload. So the good news is, your days of having to refresh the page a bajillion times are over. The development server is smart enough to watch for changes, and so when you change something and save it, it will automatically reload the page for you. So for instance, if instead of save, I said flap your arms wildly to reload, then it will automatically update that for me. So it's nice. So if we want not this HTML, but the HTML that's in here, let's say we just move it over. That could work, right? All right, so let's get rid of the stuff that we don't need. So we want to keep the outer div. And why do we want to keep the outer div? Yeah, because for our XML to be valid, there has to be, we're got to be returning only one thing. It can have as many children as you want, but it can only return one element. So we want to keep the outer one, just erase everything else in there. Since we got rid of that, we also don't need the logo anymore. You can get rid of that. And then we don't need any of the default CSS either. So go open up app.css, and you can just erase all that. And now we have a nice blank page. I'm going to try to remember to do more often commits, so let's do our first commit here. We'll just say removed yeah. All right. So next, we want to take our markup that's here. Now question, do I want everything from in here or just some of it? Like which stuff do I want? Do I want anything in the head tag? No, because our index.html already has that. How much of the body do I want? Do I want to include the body tag? So if we look at public index.html, we've already got a body tag, right? We just basically want everything inside that. So let's do that. So we're going to grab everything inside the body tag of static HTML. Copy that. And then we're just going to put it inside the main div for the app component. All right. We got all that HTML inside our app component now. And now it looks wonderful. So we got a bunch of stuff, but why does it look awful? What was that? Anybody know why it doesn't look right? No CSS. So we moved the markup, but we didn't move any CSS. Also, before we do that, let's open up our dev tools. And what warning am I getting? Who wants to read that for us? Jaden, you want to read that for us?
It says unknown DOM property class. Did you mean class?
What does that mean? So unknown DOM property class. Did you mean class name? Well, I don't know, probably. Because what's the problem with all my classes? Yeah, we're in JavaScript now, so we can't use class. And we got a whole bunch of classes in here. Wouldn't it be nice if we could change a bunch of them at the same time? That would be lovely. So VS Code lets you do that. If you do Command F on a Mac, I assume Control F does the same thing on a PC. We'll bring up this find. And then you can find every instance of a particular word. So we are going to look for class equals. I don't want to do just class because that would target this one as well. But if I target class equals, that's probably everything I want to target. And then you can hit this little triangle here. So I can find this, and then what I want to replace it with goes in the next box. So I want to replace all instances of class equals with class name equals. This will do it one at a time. So you see that I'll change that first one and then go to the next one. Or I can hit this button to do them all at once. Be careful with that if you're doing that in a project. But in our case, I know it works, so you can go ahead and hit that button if you want, if you're sure you got it typed right. Yeah. Not currently, no. But I will make sure at the end of class to push it. I mean, I could push it real quick if you want. We could do a commit real quick. So we're going to say replace class with class name. Always. All right, so if you, that should be up on GitHub now on the afternoon branch. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Have we not done that before? Sorry. Thanks for asking a question. Which brings me to another point. Never be afraid to ask questions because there's probably a bunch of other people with the same one. So yeah, VS Code does do Git integration with this little thing here. So when you push that, it will show you if you have any uncommitted changes in your files, which files have changed. And then you can just put in the message here. And this check mark will commit it for you. And this refresh will push anything that you have not yet pushed up. Also, it's refresh, not just push. So if there's any changes on the remote repository that you don't have, it will try to get those merged in as well. So yeah, sorry. I did not realize we had not done that yet. Yeah. The most recent one was just changed class to class name. All right. So, looking a little better, but we still haven't brought over our styles yet. That's just basic foundation stuff because we use some foundation classes in here, so now those are applying. Let's go ahead and bring over the rest of the styles. So they'd already made the app CSS for us. So let's just grab all of our stuff in static CSS. Copy that and just put it into app.css. Yeah, we removed what was there a couple steps back, but if you didn't do that, you can just override it. That'll be fine. And now, oh man, looking nice. What do you think? Does everything look right? Almost, but we got a couple weird issues, like these fonts are not right. Some of the fonts are right, but not all of them. That's definitely not right. These fonts aren't right. Let's take a look and see if we can figure out why that is happening. So if you look all the way at the top, originally I was setting font family for most of the app in the body tag. But when we look at our index HTML, you can see our React app is taking over here. So it's not, doesn't have control of the body tag. The body tag is outside of our React app, right? So I can't use that body selector anymore because it's outside of the React app's control. So we just need to figure out a different selector that we could use that will encompass everything, but is not the body tag. So probably just our outer level div already has a class of app on it. So we can just change body to .app instead. And then, there we go. Now we got the right fonts. Does that make sense of why that didn't work previously? So originally we had the selector for this rule that was setting the font family for the whole thing as body. But when we look at our HTML for this, so this is the div where our React app takes over. It's inside body. So it only controls what happens inside of it. So it can't do styling for outside of it. So basically our body selector wasn't doing anything. We had to pick a different selector that's inside our app. And the app that encompasses everything for us, but is still inside our app, is this main div with the class of app. So once we change that, then that CSS can apply to it, and then we get the right stuff here. All right. So we did some copy and pasting. Everything looks good. You guys are React experts, ready to go home. Awesome. It's been a good boot camp. I appreciate all of you. Yeah. Now go build Instagram. All right. Let's say we make our own component now. That'd be cool. All right, so we got that, but this is still a lot of markup in a single component. And we already kind of mentioned there's some more atomic ways that we'd like to break this up. So let's start with just at the top of the page, and let's do the header component. Yeah.
If it still says welcome to React and spinning the atom, then that means it's still loading, or what's?
No, that means did you save your changes?
I don't know. I pretty much just opened the server and this is what happened.
Okay, we'll have to take a look. All right, so which part of this markup is our header? It's pretty much everything. This has our header class in it. You can see there's our nav links, there's our h1. So pretty much everything from here to here is our header. So we want to make a component that renders that part of the UI for us. So first step, let's go ahead and make a component. So in your source folder, make a new file. And we're just going to call it header.js. And the first thing I need is a reference to React. So if you look in app.js, that's what this line here is doing. We got to import React from React. By default, if I don't give it a specific path, it's going to look in node modules, which is fine because that's where it is. If I want to import something from a very specific location, then I could give it a more complete path. But we'll just basically do this same line in header.js. Import React and component from React. Now that we have the React library, then what's my next step? What do I need to make a component? We just need to make a class, right? So class header. You always want your file name and your component name to be the same so you don't confuse yourself later on. And then we say it extends component. And then our last step is we need to use this file in other files. So just like we import files into here, those have to be exported somewhere else, right? So we need to export this file so we can use it elsewhere. So just export default header. Now there's a couple different types of exports, and actually this uses both. So every JavaScript file can have one default export. And so that's where, so like React's default export is just React. You can also have named exports, which component is a named export inside of React. This file, we're just exporting the one thing, so we're just going to make that the default. So then when we import it, where do we want to import this into? Where are we going to use the component? App, yep. So over here in app, we want to go ahead and import it from, and it is not in node module, so we need to tell it specifically where it is. So we use a relative path. We say it's in the same folder that we're in now, but at /header. And so that imports it over here. And we can do that because we exported it in this file, so the other file can know about it. If we didn't export it, it would just say, hey, I don't see anything called that, so I can't import it. Now what's the one method all of our components have to have? Render. And for now, let's just have it do something simple, like put an H1 in there and say header. So we imported React, we made our class that extends React's component class, put in our render method, have it return a bit of JSX, and we're exporting that so then we can import it into the app.js. And then let's just go ahead and put it here. So we're just going to make a self-closing tag where we just put header in there. And theoretically, if we did everything properly, oh, look, there it is. So we still have the original markup, but we just added our header component above it. And you can see that that now is the first thing that gets rendered. Yep. So once we had our component made, then it was just importing that file into the file we're going to use it in, and then putting the tag for it in the markup. So a lot of times I'll do that when I make a new component. Just put something simple in here initially rather than trying to move all the markup over. So it's kind of similar to when we were doing things like just do a really simple console log when we hook up an event handler. We just want to make sure everything's wired up correctly before we do anything more complicated. But ultimately, this is obviously not the markup that we want. So let's go ahead and do that next step, which is replace that H1 with all of the markup for the header. So we can cut that out. And then we're going to go multiple lines now, so we want to put the parentheses and paste that in. And then if we did everything right, everything should look exactly the way it did before, and it does. So congratulations, you just made your first React component. Give yourself a round of applause. Lovely. They were real excited. All right. Now, so we moved that over, and you can start to see even already how much clearer this makes doing things this way as opposed to having one giant wall of HTML. This is really a more declarative way of doing it. It's not saying, okay, now render in H1, now render in H3, now render some nav links. It's saying, hey, just render the header. And it's the header's responsibility to know how to render that piece of the UI. So, especially once we get done with all of these components, you'll be able to look at app.js and just see like, oh, I've got a header, I've got an article, I've got some links, I've got an ad. And so it's really easy to see what you're putting on the page. And then if you need to know the details, then you can go into the individual components to look at how they specifically work. So one other thing to think about here is, so we made header.js, and so that is our component, but all of our styling is still in app.css. It would probably be better if there are styles in here that relate just to that header, to put it into a file that's specific to the header. So that way it becomes completely portable. We know that the styles for the header are going to be in header.css. We don't have to look through a giant app.css file to figure out. So let's go ahead and make that as well. So make another new file. Make header.css. And then we need to take all the styles that pertain specifically to the header and put them into that file. So, should this one go over there? No, why not? Yeah, because it's the whole app. It doesn't pertain just to the header, right? How about these? I mean, there's a lot of H1s and H2s in there, but there's probably some of those on the rest of the page as well. How about .header? Probably, unless I did a horrible job of naming my classes. Most likely, that is stuff that is for the header. So let's grab everything with that. Headline, we can see that class is in there as well. Let's see. Sensitive mouse scroll today. That logo is in the header. The nav links are definitely in the header. Some hover effects for the nav links. We haven't really talked about media queries yet, but this makes it do different things at different screen sizes. But still, as far as the classes are concerned, it's headline and header, so that applies. And then we get to .article, which we can assume is not part of the header. So we really want everything down to there. So you can just cut those out and put them into header.css and save that. And then everything looks terrible again. What part did we not do? Import. So we moved it to a different file, but none of our other files know about that file yet. So what file do you think we should import the CSS into? Header.js, right? So below our React import, we're just going to say import /header.css. And then, hooray, all our styles are back. Does anybody have any questions so far? Do you feel like you could make the next component on your own? So we'll just review the steps real quick. So first we just make a JS file for the component. The name is just whatever you want the component to be. So we made that. Make sure that you import React, because it needs to know about React to be able to be a React component. You make your class, same name as your file name. Make sure it extends React component. And then make sure it gets exported so other files can use it. Right now, at least for the several of the basic levels of homework, you don't need to do anything with props or state or anything. So it means that they can all have just a render method. So they can be that simple. And just make sure that that render method returns some valid JSX. And then wherever you want to use the component, you just import it into that file and put the tag into the markup. Yeah, Tom.
I don't remember it says, but like if the HTML has a function, we need to input the function to our component.
Like what sort of function? So this will automatically have access to all the normal JavaScript functions. If you wanted to import like a different library, you would probably have to do a specific import. But all the normal stuff, you know, map, filter, reduce, like all those sort of things. Document, query selector, if you should need to do that for some reason. Yeah, those you can just call in there because it's just a normal JavaScript file. Any other questions? All right, so let's talk about homework. Oh, first let me commit this. So what do? We make header component and style it. And that should be pushed up to GitHub. So let's look at the homework for this evening, which is in the README. So, like we said, one of the first steps of becoming proficient in React is to learn how to break an app down into components. You, with the help of your classmates, already kind of discussed what components might be appropriate. It is perfectly fine if you do not break it down all the same way, but just kind of use your own judgment as far as what you think a good chunk of the UI functionality is, and do that. We already did all the forking and cloning of the repo. So, what are the requirements? We've already got the header component, so you already got one done. The basic requirements are to split the page into at least 6 total components. So I already said quite a few. That could be the article, that could be like a avatar for the author, the ad or the aside, whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
So right now is it in 2 components?
So technically 2, yeah, because you have the app component and then the header component as a child. Yeah. Okay, but 5 more. I kind of don't count the app because that one kind of just has to be there. All right, so bonus credit, split it into at least 10 total components, including components in components. Whoa, which technically you have done because you have already rendered header inside app. So it's not any more complicated than that. So say I wanted to break those nav links into another component. I would make the nav links component, put the markup for it over there, import that into header, and just put a navlinks tag in the header markup where the original markup was. So not difficult, but good practice because you will definitely use nested components throughout doing React things. Super bonus credit. Render the 4 article links at the bottom of the screen using map and passing in the props they need. So we kind of talked about that a little bit already. We said really the only thing that are different between these 4 is the picture and then the caption at the bottom. So if you were to make a single article link component, or whatever you want to call it, and passed in the URL for the picture and the title for it, then you could render them dynamically by just mapping over the array of them. Super mega bonus credit. Make a component that contains a text field for leaving a comment. Have the text field appear only when the comments link at the